Hey everybody, welcome to Forever Motoring. Today we have a special guest named Stefy Bau. Maybe you've heard of her. She's the fastest, or one of the fastest, women in the world, highly regarded as one of the best motocross racers ever to race. She's won 3 world championships, the Loretta Lynn, 7 Italian championships, at least 2 WMX USA championships, and on and on. She knew she wanted to do motocross from a very young age. She was already riding when she was 4 on a very cute little bike. And by the time she was 6, she was telling her parents that she knew what she wanted to do, and that was to be a motocross racer. By the age of 17, she'd gone pro, and around that same time became the first woman eligible to compete with male racers in the field. However, her home country of Italy, though she had qualified in the top 3 of all racers in that country, would not allow her to compete for them in the World Championship because she was a woman. So she decided to move to the United States and make it happen another way. And she soon became eligible there and did become the first woman to compete against male racers in the field. And that persistence and belief of Steffi's really continued even when she was challenged in the most extreme way in a terrible crash in 2005 that left her unable to walk and just suddenly changed her entire trajectory. But as she tells it, it also woke her up to a larger mission and showed her that these kind of events help you understand that when a mountain appears, you don't always have to go over it. Sometimes you can go through it, or around it, or even under it. The real trick, or the real skill, life skill as she tells it, is in finding the strength not to give up. So we talk about that a bit today and how she found her strength, and she really is strong in so many ways. Not only is she, as I said, one of the fastest women in motocross racing, and not only has she won all these championships in supercross and motocross, she's also a businesswoman. She was the CEO for an electric bike company, Fantic Bikes, in the USA, or the USA branch of it. It's an Italian company. And she's also founded her own eSports company for sim racing called Init Sports, I-N-I-T. You've probably heard of eSports. Maybe you dismiss them, maybe you love them, but I suggest you check out this e-racing and sim racing, which is part of what Init does, Steffi's company. They have over 80,000 people turn up every week to watch these racing events, which are all online. And it is like a powerhouse for sim racing and motorcycle events right now. And with esports being a billion-dollar industry, Stefy Bau is one of the most powerful women in the field. But she's also focusing with her company on real-life events, starting numerous programs to help young women find their passions in the STEM fields and science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, also helping e-racers become racers in real life. Stefy herself has also been featured as a character in numerous video games. I think she was also the first woman to be featured in any motocross video game ever. Stefy has really led and mentored so many women in motorsports, and she does so from so many angles. The riding, but also the business angle, also just in terms of inspiration and sharing what she's been through and what she's learned. She really puts her heart and soul into everything, as you'll hear in this interview, and she really believes that together we can change the world. Maybe more of us will join her in that spirit and belief so we can find better ways of forever motoring. I hope you enjoy getting to know Stefy Bau as much as I did, and I hope you look her up, check out her endeavors and her work, maybe even become a sim racer. All right, let's go. Hi, Stefy. Thanks for being with us today on Forever Motoring.
Hey, nice to meet you, and I'm happy to be here.
So this is a podcast about what moves us and the ways that we move. So the first question I'd like to ask you is just, what's a moment in your life when you remember being moved?
Well, I am a person that was born already with an idea in mind on what I wanted to do. At 6 years old, I looked at my mom and dad in the eyes and I said that one day I would become a motocross racer. So I moved myself very well. And I just like to go for things and try to do things that kind of break that glass ceiling for women in male dominated industry.
You were 6 years old when you told your parents?
My mom and dad were fan of the sport, so they had the magazine to come around in the house. And then every time there was the World Championship coming to Italy, they were bringing me with them. So I got so fascinated by the sport that's what I wanted to do, and I was able to win 3 world titles.
It's incredible. 3 women's world titles and 7 in Italy, is that
That's
right? And
correct. Yeah,
3 AMA, do I have it right?
that is all correct. I was the first woman to race competitively with the men on the top of the sport. So I do have a few firsts in my career.
You definitely do, and I know you started really young. I think your father took you somewhere near your house when you were just a really little kid, and I'm wondering, was that boys and girls racing? Did you think about being a woman?
No, I think until like the 13, 14 years old of age, there is nothing different. So you're just a kid. So you go out there and you play and then you ride, you race, but it's all the same. But then when you start to be a teenager, hormones comes into place. So it becomes a different
Mhm.
story. And then you start thinking, oh yes, I'm growing up to be a young woman and those are young boys. So it becomes a little bit more competitive in a way. And because the classic of the boys doesn't want to be beaten by the girl. And for me, I was like, well, if I'm as fast as in you, I deserve to be there. So at the teenage year, it kind of like started to change and being a little bit more difficult. But I had 2 wonderful parents that taught me that anything you want to do in life, you just have to work hard and go for it. I grew up with that mentality. So I was behind the gate with everybody else. I have the helmet on, everybody else, and I would just go in and do the best I could.
So those are really, like, your earliest memories would be a lot of them would be connected to the motocross, or would they?
Yes, absolutely. At some point, I remember I had a whole entourage, like uncle and aunts. They were coming to cheer my grandma and whatnot. So yes, it was a totally family affair, and I've been super lucky to have my parents did so many sacrifices for me to be able to achieve what I did in this sport. And I guess it becomes a little easier when you win because not only me, I wanted to go to the next race and win again, but also becomes like something for the family too.
And did you feel that early on? Did you get sort of addicted to the trophies and the excitement and the winning for your family,
Oh,
that
yeah.
feeling? That must have been something very special.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, it changes with time. Like at the very beginning, when you're very young, you just like to bring home the trophy. So, you're waiting for the weekend to go race. When I started to grow into the professional ranking, then it becomes more like a job. And therefore, you started to appreciate even more the fact that your parents, your family did so many sacrifices for you to be able to achieve what your goals are. So the mentality changed there. Now, really, you're not doing it just for yourself. Now you're doing it for the family. So we were all together to go and pursue this.
Yeah, it's interesting when what that moment when you start to realize it's not just about you, it's about your family. And then it sounds like you also had some further realizations that it was also about women and charting a kind of new path for women.
I guess it started out not so much for others. Like at the beginning was more like, hey, I'm good at this. I'm now having the opportunity to be professional. And therefore, I wanted to demonstrate with everybody, but to myself too, that I'm a woman. So what? Like I can do a male dominated industry. And with that automatically comes the effect of inspiring others. I would say that I did have a important moment in my career, which is when I got hurt. I had a career ending injury and that
In
like
2005, is that right?
2005, correct. So I was already toward the end of my career. I was 28 years old and motocross is a young sport. And you are never prepared, especially in the way that happened to me, meaning that all of a sudden anything that I knew up to that point in life stopped completely. But I was able again through family and support to turn the negative into positive. And at that moment is when I realized, hey, now I can do stuff for others. right? And continue to help the community and help other women so they want to pursue a career such as the one that I had and help them avoid some mistake and be there for them. So that was a critical moment when I finally realized that there is a lot that can be done for other women in the sport.
And it wasn't even just in motocross. You've actually opened many different paths in many different fields. But first, that kind of time between, I guess it was mostly like the late 90s that you were really winning all these races, right? The early
That is
2000s.
correct. Yes.
How did you end up going pro? And then how did you end up in this international scene? You started racing, you were really good at it, you were natural at it. How did it become your job?
I turned officially professional at 17 years old. When basically when you become professional, when you start getting paid for what you do, right? That's the how
Right.
you classify somebody as professional, what they do. So it's a combination of both sponsor, they pay your way, they want to be associated with you. And then also there are prizes on winning races. It's a combination of both things. So with that, it started to feel very good because sort of like a hobby turned into something that, hey, I can do this for a living.
And I guess you were getting a lot of attention then too, probably.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But also come with a stupid age, meaning it happened during the time that you are in your stupid ages because 17, it's a difficult time in everyone's life.
That's for sure. So much changing. But it sounds like you were confident, which you must have had to be winning these races. That can be a time when people are very, yeah, not confident. So you obviously were. You had some confidence.
Yes, a lot of confidence there. A lot of time it got interpreted as cockiness, but it comes with the territory.
Many good athletes, yeah, have this, I guess.
Yeah, you have to believe that you are the best in the world to be able to do what you do. So it just comes with it. But then eventually, and luckily, you grow out of that phase and then you become a normal human being again.
Yeah, but you actually did become the best in the world. Not everyone does that, but in any case, okay, so you're 17, you're a little bit cocky or confident, and you're winning races, and you're starting to go pro.
Yes, I started to race in Europe. So I put myself in front of like a bigger competition and I started to have success in Europe as well. And then my goal was to become the first woman to race a round of the men world championship. So back then we are talking 1998. How the sport used to work was that you needed to do qualification in your own countries and through a time trial. So if during that time trial you were in the top five, then technically you could have been selected to go to represent your own country into the world championship round or the entire series. So I did this time trial in Italy and I had the third fastest lap time. So I was on cloud nine. I'm like, I made it. And like with the cockiness and the confidence, I appreciate that you call it confidence. I was like, oh my God, I just made history. I was gonna be the only female in the history of the sport to do this. I'm gonna make history. This is what I dreamt of since I was little and so on and so forth. And then a few days later, I received a phone call from the federation saying, we decide not to send you because you are a female. And that was hard.
That was the message. We decided not to send you because you are a female. Oh,
Yeah, that was insane. And that was still early ages, I guess. In Italy, discrimination was overlooked at that time. So that was actually the turning point for me to want to come to the United States. So that's what made the change. And I'm like, gentlemen, you're not going to let me do it here. I'll show you. I'll make it happen. So then I packed up my luggage. I went to the United States. I did not speak a word of English then. And I started racing. Like I had the support from Kawasaki when I first arrived in the US. So I had a sponsor because I was professional over in Europe. I was able to receive support in the United States right away. And then I came in and I started winning races. And then I asked to have the professional license with the men here in the United States. And because I had the points to be able to do it, I was not declined it. So I had it. And that point, I finally achieved what I wanted to achieve. in the United States instead of for my own country. But it comes full circle because in 2005, which was a bittersweet year for me, I did receive that phone call where they asked me to become the first woman to race in the world championship.
Ah, so they want you back
Yeah,
now. They wanted you back then.
exactly. They wanted me back. And then it was a, like I said, a good reward because at that point I was like, yep, I will be super happy to do this, but this is how much it's going to cost you now. So it came full circle at the end,
It's
1998.
amazing you made that happen, though.
Yeah.
Is that normal for you that you decide to make something happen and you do make it happen?
Yeah, I'm
Is
like that
that
kind of
yeah.
person. If I like something, because I'm fueled by passion, right? So if I like something and I love it, then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make it
Mhm.
happen. I'll figure it out a way. And then when I do a lot of keynote speech or like inspirational speech to people, I always say, picture a mountain in front of you. There is so many ways to go around it. You can go on top, underneath, through it, around it. You just have to find a way. It's not because there is a mountain that is going to stop you. So just keep going for what you love.
I love that because I was expecting you to say you can always get over it. But yeah, you just opened up a whole other space to think you can go around it, you can go on the side of it, you can go that's like a whole other way of thinking that there's many, many ways to deal with
Hmm.
that thing that's ahead of you.
Indeed.
And you've had a few of those mountains, the actual races themselves, but also what we've been talking about, the limits that you broke through in terms of women. But then also this accident that came in 2005, which I want to talk about next. But first, I want to go to that moment when you got that letter in Italy. Did that shock you?
Oh,
Were you expecting that at all? Okay, now I see how it is that because I'm a woman, I can't compete.
well, it was, I would say, a combination of emotion. I was not expecting it. I was enraged. I was like, why this? Why? Why there has to be a difference? I'm just behind the gate with the helmet like everybody else. It doesn't matter if I'm a woman and I'm not a man. Why this? So
Exactly.
I guess it fueled even more my desire to be the best. So that's why I say what I said, like, okay, this is just a bump in the road. I'm going to come full circle around and I'm going to do it somewhere else.
In a way, it gave you more energy to achieve something and do something that from a different way that ended up actually bringing even more things into your life, positive things, I imagine.
Absolutely, absolutely. Everything that happens in life happens for a reason. And if you can really try to always find the positive out of it, then you're going to always win. So for me, that was like, hey, I can go to the United States, which is a country that a lot of people aspire to go and live there and do my sport. Mama was not super happy, I have to tell you that. But my parents always knew that if I wanted something, I was going to go and get it no matter what. So that was my turning point to come to a different country and with the good and the bad, because it's not easy, especially if you are by yourself.
Oh, no, and the language, that can be so hard.
Yeah, the language, a totally different culture. It was not easy. But again, I have that goal in my mind. So nothing was going to stop me. And I went for it.
It's amazing that determination. But when you were actually racing, these times when you're winning so much and there's so many races, what was your schedule like during were you training all the time? Were you going to school
Yeah.
still?
Yes, it's training all the time. When I was in my professional years, my typical day was something like this: getting up at 7 in the morning, go for a 4 or 5 miles run, then come back home, breakfast, and then go to the track. And at the track, spending like the majority of the day doing what we call it in the industry motos, which is 40 minutes on the track, like to mimic a race. So you were going to do that 2 or 3 times and then come home and go for a 20-mile bicycle ride or a swim, right? That was
Wow.
every
Mhm.
day. It's a lot of physical activities, but you have to be in the top shape possible to be able to be at the top of the sport. It's very demanding. It's also very demanding mentally. So be able to have a body that can sustain you, what you want to do, it helps the mental side as well.
I've never been on a dirt track and I just wonder, could you describe the feeling of it? How does it
Uh,
how does it feel? And yeah, especially in terms of needing to be in shape?
I mean, to me, what the sport of motocross and supercross taught me is everything that I needed to have in life, period. So let me explain them more like this. The track changes every lap. So you need to be sharp as a sharpshooter, meaning like you have to be completely focused all the time because if you mess up, you can get on the ground. If you don't pick your line correctly, another opponent can come up and pass you, right? So you have to
Hmm.
look all the time, scanning that ground in super fast and make a decision like it right there on the spot. Then the physical side, you have aerobic and strength all at once. So to be able to do this sport is like a soccer player that runs for the entire time of a match, in addition to a bodybuilder together. So it's a lot. And then comes the strategy even more in regards to how to manage your strength and your abilities. And that for a length of time, like each race is about 40 minutes. So for 40 minutes, like you need to be able to pace your capabilities and win against your opponent. So there is a ton of components that go into this sport. And I feel very lucky that I choose this sport. But again, those are similar things that you do in life. Another thing, once you win, you are in front of 80,000 people, you have to make a speech. So that is, to me, is very similar to like when somebody goes for a job interview, you might not be in front of 80,000 people, but the feeling is the same because you have to perform and say the right things to be able to have your audience cheering you on or liking you or hiring you, right? That's also another thing that I learned through the sport. So yeah, and the never give up attitude. Again, in life, like in motorcycle racing, we used to say you crash 10 times and you get up 11. You never stay on the ground. And the same thing with life. If there are stuff that happens to you, it doesn't matter. You keep going. You get up, you keep going. I just had a talk at the Full Sail University last week, and it was fun because I titled the talk "Do Not Let Go of the Handlebar," and that is because in motorcycle, like, the last thing that you do, like the last thing you do when you're about to crash, and like it's almost unsavable the crash, you still hold on to the handlebar. And then sometimes you have to let go because, it happens. And that is a lesson in life. You have so many things coming to you and happening to you during your life. But if you stay strong and motivated on what you have the passion for and what you like, you're definitely not going to let go of that handlebar.
It's a good image too to carry around. You had this long life history, even though you're only 28 by the time you had this crash in 2005, but you'd really developed a whole kind of way of being in the world that was about those things you just described. Being in the present moment, in a sense, because
Hmm.
you don't know exactly what's coming next, being able to balance, being able to be seen and talk in front of people, all these qualities. I also imagine you had to learn some business instinct
Oh,
about how to take care of yourself in terms of money and all of that. That's
yeah.
a whole other lesson. So it really was like a school of, I don't know.
I can call it like a school of life because, again, for me, the sport that really gave me all the tools necessarily to then continue to do what I had a passion for in life after racing. Again, the never give up attitude, the resilience, respecting others, because you have to respect your competitors too. Like they're there to try to win as well. So you need to be able to stay in front of them without creating a crash or endanger others, right? So that's a form of respect. You are you and you be the best you can by competing against other people and work hard so you can be the best. And if you're not the best, it's okay. It's okay to fail. Like the crash in motorcycling racing represent also that, in my
Mhm.
opinion. Like you can fail, you can crash, but you have to get up and do it again.
You can learn a lot from that, I guess. Sometimes even more than just winning all the time.
Exactly. Because you learn not to do that again the next time.
Hmm. Life can really give us some big challenges and some really difficult things. And even with this whole skill set you had, I have to imagine that the last thing you really expected was what happened when you were 28 and in 2005 and you had this crash and it was during a practice or
Yes.
set it up for us a little bit.
Yeah, we were getting ready to prepare for the 2006 season. So we were testing in Thomasville, Georgia. I was with the Honda team at the time, and I messed up at this jump. And in the 2, 3 seconds I was in the air, that I knew that the accident was going to happen. The first thing I thought about it was, dang, I'm going to miss the next week race. And the second thought was like, this might hurt quite a bit. But again,
Mhm.
the first thing in my mind was like, not be scared, not be upset or whatever. I can race next week. So again, it shows the character or like a hyper condition with this sport. But
Mhm.
then again, you grow up with this sport to make all of this kind of decision in a split of a second. And sometimes are good,
Mhm.
sometimes are not. And you live with the consequences of it. In this case, I don't know what happened. I can't tell if it was my error, a motorcycle error, but it did happen. And on the line of what we are saying, after 2 hours since the accident, I was already on the operating room and the surgeon was saying, you might lose your legs. We have 1% chance that you have your legs coming out of the surgery. And still on that bed, I was talking to the surgeon, say, yes, okay, but when can I go back racing?
You were
Mentality,
just pushing it forward. Even that moment, you were
even
persisting.
the moment, looking forward, forget what happened. Okay, that happened. All right. So how can I go past that and continue to go forward?
That's a lot of change in 3 hours. You're practicing,
Yes.
everything's you have this regimen of waking up at 7 and all this. This whole life is built on this. You probably have a team, your family's probably still
Ye-
working with you. It's a whole moving machine, and then this thing happens, and in 2 hours, you're on an operating table and everything has changed, right?
Yes, that is correct. And the way that you put it is exactly how I felt, meaning that now what? Now what's going to happen?
Yeah.
And I have to say, I went in a dark place at first
Mhm.
because how your life all of a sudden, the life that you knew and the life that you lived, like for basically 28 years, it just stopped. Like you're
Mm.
never prepared for that. And it's just, you're getting into this spiral. This, what am I doing? What is
Yeah,
next?
it's almost must be like a state of shock too. It's almost too much to handle because everything is so linked.
Mhm.
Even just the routine of your life, changing the routine of your life in a little way is hard. But with that kind of change where it's of course it's also your passion and what you want to do, so it's mental, it's emotional, it's physical, and it's also just the routine of your day.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. As I said, I was in a dark place for a little while. Probably also fueled by the medicine I needed to take not to feel pain and all of that. But little by little, thanks to the team, meaning like the people around me, especially my family, I needed to get that change and start looking at the positive, right? And turn this negative into a positive. And what stuck with me was this concept. It was that I start telling myself that, hey, at 28 years old, I concluded an incredible career. And now I have the opportunity to start a brand new one and be as successful.
Mm.
So that's how I turn it around. And that's what's worked for me. Because justifying the fact that maybe a lot of people in the world at 28, they still don't know what they want to do when they grow up. And
Absolutely. You've already changed history.
right, exactly. So I'm like, I'm just going to take this as a chapter and now I'm going to open a new one and I'm going to be as successful at that.
That really says something about you being able to dance or be a bit flexible too. You are on this path and you are really loyal to it and persistent. But then when the mountain suddenly appeared in that path, you were able to move and get around it. Do you think that also comes somehow from your training and
Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%. Because in motocross racing, you have to make decision in a split of a second, right? So it didn't take a split of a second to get out of my dark
of
spot.
course not, yeah.
But, I was conditioned to think in that way, meaning, okay, so this happened. Now we know we need to do something to keep going. Again, it was not easy at the beginning. My mental health was not pretty at that time, but
Yeah, and it's good you say that because I think we have to let ourselves acknowledge that things are hard and the dark times do come
Mhm.
and you can let them pass.
The thing that I want to share with everybody listening is that the dark time, they do not last forever. So stick with it, go through it. It's something that it's important for individual to learn from it. It's part of growing, and they don't stick around forever. You might think that, and I was guilty of it in the moment, but yeah, just try to find some ways to grab something and fail forward, like looking
Mhm.
forward, like on what's happening in that moment.
How did you do that? Was it mostly just thinking, "What could I do next?" Or was it talking to people, or was it
It could be,
reading something, or
I guess it was a combination because at first it took me some time to realize that I was never gonna be a motorcycle racer again. I thought that I could continue racing even though it was this scariness of having my legs amputated. My mind was still going there and say, hey, I can become an X Games adaptive. So continue to go
yeah.
to that direction and
Mhm.
say, nothing can stop me. This is just a bump in the road, and so on and so forth. However,
Yeah.
like my injury took 10 years to fix. So it was a long and strenuous journey.
It was your ankles mostly in the end?
The problem was that on my left ankle, I developed a hole. And this hole was, this might be a little bit gruesome for some listeners. So if you don't want to listen, just cover your ear for a second. This hole opened and they couldn't figure it out how to close it. And they couldn't figure it out why that was happening. And I still decided to live my life. So I was going around. I went to Africa, I went to other countries, and I was going into doctor offices, walking in, and they said, it's impossible that you're walking. And I'm like, okay,
Oh,
so you're not a doctor for me because clearly I just walked in here. So
very
even that
good, yeah.
mentality, if
Mhm.
you're telling me that it's impossible, I'm walking and I'm walking. So either I'm crazy or you're crazy. It's all of this thing that it's all related to my life as an athlete to want to keep going and keep doing things in the way that I need to think, yes, this is the right way or not. So it did take a long
Well,
time.
when you were traveling around, was this the time when you were starting to do some mentorship? I'm trying to figure out how you eventually found your way into being a mentor to many
Yeah.
other women in the sport. I guess it was in those 10 years that it started.
Yes, indeed. So, like my accident was in 2005, the end of 2005. So, for the entire 2006, I was in bed, then in a wheelchair, and then, trying to learn to walk again. Let's put it like that. And then in
Mhm.
2007 is when I finally got the switch saying, hey, I need to start a new career here. Actually, I had the sport. So I was able to become the general manager of the newly born FIM Women Motocross World Championship. So before I used to race with the girls, and now they asked me to be the general manager of the championship. So for me, that was an incredible proud moment because I had the opportunity to now be the mama to all the other girls. I was the mentor to everyone. I loved it because I put it down on the table right away. Hey, there is no competition with me anymore here. So let me help you. I'm not your competition anymore. So let me help you become the best you can be. So that was a magic in that happening. I loved that time of my life. Like we were able to create a super strong community. So now, yes, when the gate dropped, everybody was an enemy. But when we were done with racing, we actually really worked all together, almost like a team, where we were figuring out what we could do better to grow the sport as a whole. So
Mm.
I kind of like felt into a position of leadership and be the person that everybody was coming to for advice and figure it out how they can be better and get more sponsors. And that was very rewarding because now it's when my life changing on the giving back and not only be about me and my racing, but start giving back.
That must have felt good to be able to give so much. It can be very healing to be able to give, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah, it comes at a certain point in life, I guess. but the power of giving back to others, it fulfills you in so many different ways that it's like one of the best things that an individual can experience, in my opinion.
Even better than winning a world championship?
Yes. Yes, in a way it is because now you just see other people doing what you did, right?
Mm,
So it reinforced to you as an individual that what you did was meaningful because now there is others that wanted to do it too. And be part of their life is so powerful that it just creates this whole feel good situation, which I think if more and more people will do it in the world, we will have probably a world with less craziness that we do, you know?
definitely. If people understood that, that can be so fulfilling.
Yes, absolutely. But I do think that comes with age. We are beings that we continue to grow. And it would be weird to see a kid all day is just like that, that doesn't think about
True.
herself and think about others, right? So you have, it is a rite of passage in life. You need to do what that moves you, what that makes you passionate. And then there is a time in your life that you'll say, well, this is bigger than just me. So you wanted to start helping others to experience the same. So at least this is what happened to me in my life.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not either or. You can do both. You can excel and go with what moves you.
For sure. So we were talking a little bit about the trajectory after the racing. So first I did that. Then from there, I was able to be part of the Women Commission inside the FIM. So the FIM is the International Federation of Motorcycling, which is based in Geneva, Switzerland. And that was another step toward like helping more women getting involved as a whole and come up with the strategies and plans to how to continue to increase that. A little bit political for what I used to be doing up to that point.
Mhm.
But, you know, it was another great experience in my life and I learned a lot, like on how sometimes you have to be to make things happen. I'm always like, yeah, drop the gate. Sometimes instead you just have to hurry up and wait.
Well, another first of yours was being the first woman in a video game, motocross video game. Is that right?
Yes. And that's cool. That's super cool because it also ties back in with what I'm doing now. And who knew that was going to come full circle like that? This was the year 2000, the first video game I was part of. EA Sport decided to create a game and have a motorcycle racer be part of it. And I got asked to be one of them. So we are talking 23 years ago. It's like mind blowing to think about it.
You must have just gone pro more or less, or
Yeah, yeah. That was when I went to pro. That is correct.
so you were the first woman in the video game too. The other people were men, I guess, in that game.
Yes,
It's kind of
yes.
cool you did it in the virtual world too.
Yes, indeed. And I think that's why it kind of like came together because of that. And it was super cool. Again, it was my second year in the United States. Here I come, you know, with this bleach blonde hair from Italy, barely speaking any English and having the chance to be in a video game. I was like, oh my God, this
Awesome.
is crazy. This just happens in the movies.
You were living it. Okay, so you were in video games, but you didn't play them that much because you were living it in real life. But somehow the esports has just exploded in the past 5 or 10 years, or even the past 4 years. I want to talk a little bit about that for people who don't know much about it yet. But how did you get into it? This idea of sim racing and esports. When did that come into your life?
Yes. So it happened because I went to Italy just before the pandemic hit, right? I went to Italy visiting my family and I saw my little niece that she was spending 2 to 3 years a day watching people play.
2 to 3 hours watching,
Yes.
just
I'm
watching,
like,
not playing, but watching. Yeah.
watching. Yes. Watching. So, like, consuming entertainment in a way of watching video games. So I'm like, this is very interesting. Like the kids nowadays, they're spending their time watching gamers. A light bulb came up, and I'm like, maybe I can use this to be able to bring more women and minority into motorsport by lowering the barrier of entries. With gaming, it's much easier because even a console sets you off maybe $300, right? But a go-kart or a motorcycle is $5,000. Only a certain category of people is able to do that. So therefore, using and utilizing gaming will be an opportunity to open up way more doors and therefore expand the base of motorsport as a whole. So I went to
Hmm.
learn, and then the pandemic hit, and Formula One was teaching everyone how it needs to be done, meaning like in sim racing, they had Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen playing in the games with the public. So I'm like, oh my
Incredible.
God, this
Yeah.
is so cool. It's
Mm.
amazing. That got me into opening my company. They called Init. First, I fall back into the part of motorcycling because that's where I have the passion. So I connected with the AMA and explain how good it would be to get involved with the gaming community to be able to bring new people into motocross and supercross and motorcycling in general. And so we make that agreement. They say, this is brilliant. We like this. You are now the promoter for anything eSport for the AMA. So now we started to
Wow.
create the championships, and it's insane. A couple data here to just put the things in perspective. So 1/3 of the world population identifies as a gamer, and half of them are women. So for me,
Half?
a-
Did you say
half
half of that?
half of people that play
Wow.
games in the world are women.
I did not know that.
So for me, I'm like, oh my God, there it is. That's the talent pool. Like we need to go into this industry to be able to expose more women into something that I love, which is motorsport.
No one
Correct.
was doing that in
Hmm.
motocross. It was Formula One. They were starting to do it, but nobody was doing it in off road and motocross before you had this
Correct.
idea.
Hmm. Yes, that is correct.
So you saw it and you went for it.
Yep, exactly. And now the kids that play in our championship, by the way, we have 80,000 people that tune in watching the races every Wednesday night. Just to give you some context, right? It's insane.
80,000. I mean,
Good,
that's
awesome.
just, it's so wonderful. I like video games and things like this, and I like esports. I'm still new to it, but do you have any idea why so many people like to watch it?
I don't know. I think it's a generational thing. I think people like to consume entertainment now by wanting to be part of something. And with gaming now, like Twitch, for instance, which is the platform where you tend to go and watch games, you can chat with other people right there. So it becomes a community,
Hmm.
right? You can chat with who you're watching, but also with the other people. So now it's not more like a 2D television. It's becoming like 3D, meaning like you can really create this community with the younger demographic. What I have experienced is that everybody wants to do something. They're not just there and receiving information. They want to do things. If you make them do something, then that's when you get the attention. And that's why I think gaming is exploding in so many different ways.
So now you're doing it yourself. You've started your own company, eSports, and that's another first, right? The first or the only sim racing company that's led by a woman.
Init Sport is the only sim racing company led by a woman in the world, and helps a ton because with that we are able to create a lot of different opportunities. Like two main things that we have going on right now is from the sim racing stuff. So from the car part, we just created and concluded screen to speed. So screen to speed as the goal to bring female and non-binary people, minorities from the digital world, from the gaming world into the in real life world. So they qualifying online, and everybody around the world were able to qualify for it. And then the top 15, we got them to come to Las Vegas and participate into the competition, the sim racing competition. We were in Las Vegas at the racetrack, and around us, NASCAR was happening. So we were
Wow.
racing digitally the same track that we were at while NASCAR was happening around us. So it was so empowering. And the winner got to even walk on the NASCAR stage with 80,000 people cheering her on, which is like insane coming from the gaming world. We were able to change lives to these gamers that some of them, they didn't even been on an airplane before, let alone come to Las Vegas. The winner now, she's going to come back in June in Las Vegas at the same racetrack. And now she's going to test on a real Porsche race car. So from screen to speed. So from the digital world to the in real life world. And we got more than 1 million impressions on this show as the first going out. So we are going to continue to do them. There is a lot of talks in the industry because we came at it for women, by women, so in a very authentic way. And there is tons of support for it. One other thing I wanted to share is that we also have Sim for STEM now. And that's why I'm in Indianapolis right now, because we are deciding to create a bigger base. So with Sim for STEM, we are going after schools. So this event in Indianapolis is in conjunction with the Indy 500. So we have 200 girls from high school, where 50 at the time, they're going to come in 4 events, and we'll teach them STEM curriculums. So they will be doing STEM activities, motorsport related. And then what they learn, they apply in the simulators. And then the 5, 6 of them that they're going to be the most engaged throughout all of this, we'll bring them to the racetrack to meet female driver, female mechanics, female engineer, female broadcaster, because we believe that if you can see her, you can be her.
Oh, I love that so much. And also that it's not just the drivers who are super wonderful and important, but so are the engineers and the mechanics. And these are such fascinating careers and just fascinating things to do in life. I really love this connection that you're making between traditional racing and virtual racing. How do you see that kind of evolving? You've been in the real crowds and you've been in the virtual crowds. Is there a difference in the feeling of it?
I mean, it's all connected. At the end, it's all connected. It's all together. Like people that play, especially in sim racing, has been demonstrated that you can race in the sim and those skill transfer in real life. And like there has been more and more teams now that they are looking at gamers to be able to bring them into a seat of the real car. So it's incredibly connected. It's super cool. Like I love the transferability, and I believe it's the only digital sport that has that capability to go from digital to in real life.
What we didn't talk about was the kind of electric little aspect of your journey, because you did work for electric bikes for a little while, right?
Yes, the journey into the electric transportation for me was during my time that I was the CEO of Fantic Bicycle USA. So Fantic is a company that is from Italy, and they decided to open a branch into the United States. And because I'm Italian, but also I have all of the links and the bridges between Europe and the US in the motorcycle industry, it was like a natural involvement there. So, but in the US, Fantic is a motorcycle company, but also does e-bikes. And with them, we decided to open the branch in the United States, focusing on that, because as you might know, electric transportation is starting to take on more and more here in the US. It's been like a very big field, a very big industry.
Definitely.
And, it was a fantastic journey. And we were able to be from an unknown name into the United States to one of the companies that sits at the table while deciding for rules in the United States in regards to electric transportation. So very proud of the work that was done there. Again, I was one of the maybe couple female around the table because I find myself often into that position.
I guess you're getting used to that, but you bring more women to the table.
I like to say it's not about replacing the guys. It's about building a bigger table. Let's build a bigger table and bring women in it. So diversity and inclusion is so important. Like in any having different mindset and different people that come up with different cultures. For me, it's not about substituting, but it's just about building a bigger table so more women can be involved and minorities. Yes, the journey was very cool. It was just exploding in the United States in 2016 when I took on this position. And it was just the time that they were doing the 3-class systems in the US that has been adopted by many of the states. And I worked a little bit on that as well with a core group of people. For me, I am an e-bike rider. I ride e-mountain bikes because, of course, I need to stay in the dirt, not on the road. But yes, my wife and I, we ride as much as we can, and we love it. And yes, it was very good to see the transformation in regards to the approach of e-bike and the community, like the regular bicycle community as a whole. Like in Europe, it's been way ahead of time compared to the United States. So there were lots of pain points that we needed to go through because a lot of people didn't understand, oh, they are motorcycles. And no, they're not motorcycle. You pedal, you don't twist the throttle. So it's different.
Big difference.
Right?
Yeah.
But education, it's always at the base on everything in reality, and it takes time to make everybody understand. So the people for bike group that developed the 3-class system did an amazing job there to kind of like make a little bit more standardized understanding of how e-bike acts, and therefore what each state can do about it. And that was a very big thing that was done. And then after that, we continue to see more and more companies coming into the United States with their products. And from road and transportation, especially in the big cities, it's a big deal because with a younger demographic, tune in a lot into the environment and try therefore to do better for the world. Electric transportation is able to provide that. So with having cities like big city like San Francisco is one of them, they try to create more and more bike path. So instead of going to work with a car, you go to work with a bicycle, an electric bicycle.
And now you can in San Francisco with an electric bike, you can actually do it on the hills.
Yes, indeed. We were based, the branch was based there in San Francisco. So we completely saw the entire evolution of it. And now in the morning, like on the Golden Gate Bridge, you see so many electric bikes of people that choose that to go to work instead of cars, which little by little is making a change. Less car on the road, the world can breathe a little easier.
What do you think about electric motorcycles? Yeah.
I personally love them because I'm always looking ahead, looking forward of what we can do to continue to grow. Right. So whereas I grew up as a part of the gas motorcycle, my entire career was on that. And there is some magic around it, like the smell, like even right now when I smell gasoline, for me, it reminds me of my childhood. Right.
Yeah.
But we need to become more and more responsible for this planet that we live on. Right. Therefore, electric gives an opportunity to continue to have the sport in areas that now they've been outgrown by buildings, right? Before we had, especially in motocross, we had those hills and tracks on hills around fairly close to towns and cities, right? Now, guess what? The towns are expanding, the city are expanding, so they're eating up the tracks. And one of the reasons is that we don't need that because they are loud, they are noisy, they smell bad, they are not good for the environment. Well, now if we all move toward electric, that whole argument collapse. Like we can potentially have a motorcycle track in the middle of a city, in a park, and therefore grow the sport in that way. Because again, it connects all into the education. Thinking in this way, if you put a kid right off the bat at 4 years old on a regular bicycle, and then you move them on an electric motorcycle right away, they will not know the difference growing up because that's the only thing they experience. But, if you put them then into a gas motorcycle, then we're going to continue to feed the same system that we are trying to change. Be able to get in at an early age, then that kid is going to grow up and say, oh, I don't want a noisy motorcycle. I want one that I can actually hear what's going on when I race or I have fun.
Then they'll have memories of that, of the hearing the atmosphere, or different memories than the sensory ones we have of like gasoline and all those
Correct.
things.
Correct. Which again, that was the way that I grew up and I love it. But between me and you, if you go to watch a motorcycle race, you cannot even speak with somebody next to you because it's so loud. So yeah, you're there with some other people enjoying something, but in reality, it's almost like you're there by yourself. If we wanted to create a continuous sense of community, maybe we should look into lowering the sound decibel, right? And electric gets you that. So now you can be there, enjoy the show, but at the same time, having a word with the person that's sitting next to you without going home at night and not having any voice in you anymore.
Exactly. Same with car racing. Do you think they're as fun for racing?
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah.
do because I also tried a few of them,
Oh, you did?
and I mean they are just so good. Like with time and more investment, they're gonna continue to become better and better. But they are so good. It's all about the torque there. So it's a little bit less skills on how to manage the clutch, I would say, because it's more like torque.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's a lot of power. Like it lets you do whatever you need to do, just like in a regular motorcycle. The only issue still is the battery length, right? So people wanted to go for long or wanted to be able to stop if they are trail riding at a gas station and refill and keep going.
Yeah.
So we are still
You
chasing
have to
that
work
dream,
that
but it
out.
will happen. It will happen. There is no stopping evolution.
Oh no, we're going that way. So you think you can still learn those same lessons that you told us about earlier in terms of kind of
Absolutely.
life lessons from electric too?
Absolutely, because the sport is the sport. So what you experience with gasoline and sound is still the same track, right? So what I experience in my life, it can be transferred again and even with electric motorcycles. So I look forward to that. It's gonna take time because of course like the world runs on gasoline and there is politics involved and all of that. But even like on the consumer side, on the car world, it's nice to finally see more and more company like starting to develop an electric vehicle. So it's gonna happen. Yeah, it's gonna happen, and we have to. It's not it would be nice. It's more like we have to because we know what's happening. Climate change is real, and we need to be better.
Yeah, if we want to keep enjoying all these things we've been talking about, we have to find better ways to do them. Last question relates to all this we've been talking about, and you were talking about it a little while ago, but I just wonder, to tie it in about motoring and how this has been an important part of your life. I do also want to say that you did get back on a motorcycle. We talked a lot about your accident in 2008. You did it, right? You got back on, which I have to say, like, I am deep respect for that. I need to at least acknowledge that, because you were just talking about riding the electric one.
Yeah, it's about, I guess for me it was about closing the circle, because I feel like I didn't get the chance to close my racing career because it just happened for me.
Yeah.
So be able to go back on and do a few more laps, it was incredibly emotional. It was more like, okay, so now I'm ready to really close that chapter, right? And but I was born a motorcycle, so I don't own one, and that is a reason for it. Because I know that I will be going back and want it to be like once I used to be, right? So I don't have a motorcycle, but every once in a while, like when friends comes and say, hey, you want to go ride, we have an extra bike, more often than not to say, yeah, come and do a couple laps.
Oh,
But
wow.
I need to be very careful, of course, because I was lucky to keep my legs. But like a big impact can destroy what's been done, and maybe I will not be as lucky again.
Yeah, definitely be careful, because we want you to stay around.
Thank you. But like my next best things is riding mountain bike. So I don't jump them.
Okay. But riding, that's a thrilling thing. And especially if you can do it with your wife, where it's a joint experience, it makes it really special. There's
for sure. We love it, and we go with the electric ones, like I said, and we do the e-mountain bikes, and it's so good. And even that, we were talking about electric. It's important. Like people like myself, they have a permanent disability, basically, in my ankles.
Hmm.
I mean, if it wouldn't be for an electric mountain bike, I couldn't enjoy being out in the dirt. Oh, I hope the more and more people started to give it a try, because for the purists that they said, oh, it's like cheating, I'm like, try to turn it off
Yeah.
and pedal, and then tell me if it's cheating or not.
Yeah, it's just different. It's like what you were saying about the table being larger. It's like we don't have to choose, but
Yeah,
it's better that there's
exactly.
more options. And technology can help us in ways that, like you just described, it's opening more possibilities. We can be
Yeah,
more responsible.
for sure.
Okay, so you've persisted and you've found a way to keep motoring. You've gone all directions
Yes.
around every mountain that you've seen in front of you. And your life is still about motoring, even virtual motoring, electric motoring. So I guess just to end it, I'd like to hear what you think about this idea of forever motoring and all these forms that it takes and what it means to you.
Well, for me, I started when I was very young, so therefore that's my passion. I can never see my life without motoring. It's just not possible. It's part of me. So whatever that is, two-wheel, four-wheel, on skis or whatever, has to have a motor in it. And I think in general, if I should say some takeaways after this call, anybody and everybody in life, they should just follow their passion, and whatever moves you, just go for it.
Thank you so much for being with us today. And thanks for all that you do and all these paths you've opened for so many people. For women, it's definitely something special. And I want to express my gratitude for it.
Well, thank you so much. It means a lot to me. Little by little, we're going to change the world.